that actually everybody agrees that FHIR is a key driver for innovation today, but is also a certain burden for when looking at the legacies, and sometimes those legacies are heavy. And in many countries, they are only beginning to be widely deployed. So that's a critical question. So we heard Medcom speaking about years, not months, when saying that for the time that will be needed in order to deal with it in a correct way and to transform it. So my question to you, and we've seen finally that at the end of the day, because it's a new standard, many people need to deal with what is not yet there, with specific extensions and so on, which, if not dealt with correctly, might lead again to major issues when dealing with use cases which are not local or national. So what should be your reaction to that?
Okay, so let's start from your first part. So the legacy part and the cost and the time to build. Obviously, FHIR might be an enabling factor, can help to realize things, but is one of the technical solutions that can be used in order to implement a solution that is not just the technical part. So you need to consider the overall management of the overall project, the how to address the business architecture. So it's just a piece of the entire game. And this is also, if you look to the interoperability, you know better than me that it's not just a matter of technical stuff, but you need to consider all the other aspects that affect interoperability. So it's clear that if you need to realize a solution, you need to start from your processes. You need to understand how you are addressing specifically, starting also from, for example, technology and so on and so forth. And then you can say, okay, in order to do that, I think that FHIR is the right solution to address my needs. And then you can see how to try to realize what you need to for your business processes through FHIR. Is not only about FHIR, but any other technical solution. It's not a technical solution that solves your problem, but so you need to have a project to do a good project, and then you have FHIR or other standard that can help you. For the second part is the maturity. It's clear that it's quite new now. It's 10 years old, FHIR, and obviously there are two things. There are domains that are maybe less measured, and there is also design approach in FHIR that is different from other standards. You know that, for example, there is no the attempt to cover everything. The idea is to try to give a common solution to the most common needs. And then to say, okay, if you need more about that, then you can use the extension that is in any case a standardized thing. Obviously, extension open to possible different approach and solution, but this is where the community can comes in. So if you need to address, for example, how to define your official address, there is no way to do that, so that you have an extension that is defined in Netherlands to do that, and an extension that is been made in some northern country, and another extension that is being defined in Italy. And then we came out and we say, okay, but maybe why instead of having 3 different kind of extension, we cannot define a single one? And this is what is went into the HL7 process, and what is going to be done is to define a common extension to address this part. So, and this is the way to go. So to involve people in order to use the possible different choice. And what FHIR bring is that community, and also tool to share this information. So you can browse, you can query the registry and to see what others are doing for your problem, and try to replicate or adapt that solution instead of inventing new things. And this is what people is commonly doing. I don't know what to take more time. I don't know if this addressed your question. Obviously,
yeah, just maybe just one thing, and we see that it has been an incredible booster for innovation, and we know the fact that SMEs has been really the cluster which has been exploiting and developing resources for FHIR is not a surprise. This I understand very much your point, but here today we actually the cooperation which needs to take place need to be extremely agile. And in the past, I mean, people used to have time to meet, could meet in committees and align at some part and so on. Today, is there still possibility to do that? Because actually it's going so quickly.
Yeah, but there are other means to do that. So you can have, as I told, the eHealth community that allow you to share all your concern, your doubt, and try to try not to invent new things, but to see what others are doing. And it's quite easy now to browse and to understand. Obviously, this presumes that people publish and make available what they are doing. So you need to formalize what you are doing using profile, using implementation guide, register them, make them available, and then you can see what other, if they are doing the similar thing. I can bring my experience anytime that I'm dealing with a new domain, a new challenge. I'm looking what others are doing instead of trying. So I'm working on a project for these cancer survivorship passport. I look what the US are doing with them code, and okay, and this is how things need to go in order to try to reduce the number of different choice on the same thing. But what is important is that we need to have to consider that not to consider the standard as something that comes from Mars, but is a thing in which you should cooperate in order that it try to solve in a proper way also what are your needs and expectations and so on. So and this should be done at a different level. So
Thank you,
to change perspective is not a simple thing. So not to consider a passive mode to the standard, but an active mode to approach standard.
Yeah, and then I have maybe a question now for both Sarah and for Samuel. We heard about we heard Michael telling us about how and the role that Medcom has been playing as a facilitator. And actually, it's not only facilitator. I mean, the way he presented things is that it was very agile in the ways that say, well, actually, they accompany, they facilitate, then they approve, and they are the contact point, I would say. And they help to define profiles altogether. So my question may be to both Catalunya and to Luxembourg: are you also trying to work the same way? So trying to create core profiles. And Chantal might, of course, react on that, but I have another question more specific for her. But she might also react to that one, of course. Sarah, maybe you want to begin?
Yes, okay. Well, first, maybe you need to know that I'm Sara from FTSS, and the Solution Foundation is an organization of the Catalonian Department of Health, as you say, which works to promote the development and networking in the field of health and social welfare, acts as an observatory of new trends, innovation, and monitoring of emerging initiatives to the entire public and private health sector of Catalonia. And this project, and from the area of interoperability and technologies, we define needs and define how reference standards should be adapted and adopted. We promote the use of international reference standards, and we make the reference of technical information available to the whole community. And we provide also the recommendations and support to public and private organizations in this adoption of standards. Finally, we also participate in different international or European projects defining the interoperability standards to use. And that is related about your questions, that we are participating now in NICTIZ project, which is a multimodal AI-based toolbox and an interoperable health imaging repository for the empowerment of imaging analysis and related to the diagnostic, prediction, and follow-up of cancer. And this project has received funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 research and innovation program. And in Incisive, we are the responsible for defining this interoperability and the standards to be used, as Giorgio says. And that's why, as structural interoperability, we recommend the use of HL7 FHIR, and we are using. So I don't know if I can extend, but the Incisive is use a federated client platforms that functions of execute data search queries, translating user searches into Firefox queries and executing them to the underlying Firefox servers. And an IT tool is the responsibles of three types of phases. The first one is the struct phase that consists of tap into the local file system of the DP and discover the files to be processed. And during this phase, its discovered file is verified for having an appropriate format and located into the IT tool. The transform phase is the ones that consist of convert the custom format data file discovered in the previous phase into a standard message that can be ingested to the FHIR server. And this transformation process consists of converting custom CSV formatted files into FHIR message to be ingested in the FHIR server, and transformation of DICOM to be stored in the PAC server. And finally, the load phase consists to take the previous transformed data and using the appropriate APIs for the FHIR and PAC servers that are on the infrastructure of the federated node and proceed with the data ingestion. So on Incisive, we start analyzing the templates for each cancer, breast, colorectal, lung, and prostate, and then encode all the terms in SNOMED, CT, and LOINC, and we begin to define which element of which FHIR resolve was appropriate to define each encoded term, and then we create 4 XMLs message, one for each cancer, each with a FHIR bundle resource with the corresponding entries and encoded terms. So, for example, you need to know that breast message had 38 entries, colorectal had 30 entries, and prostate has 29 entries, which is a significant number of code lines. And finally, we generate an interoperability guide to help integrate the data into each message. And now we are working on the definition of the last template, which is lung cancer. And
Sarah, just for my understanding, sorry to cut you, but so that's we see that you have a high investment in developing all that, but are you also using the same governance system or the same stakeholders engagement approach that Metcom? That was also my question. So as you remember here that you're using the HL7 affiliates, they rely on them mostly, although they have, of course, a monitoring and an approval role also. So
I don't know if I understand your question, but in our Department of Health from Catalonia, we are now using HL7 CDA and HL version 2 and version 3. And we are looking for new approaches like HL7 FHIR.
So the first part of the answer is quite easy. It's our legal mission to define the interoperability framework in Luxembourg. So yes, we can redefine the profiles, but alone in our office, it will never work. That's for sure. So when we decided to go with FHIR, the first thing, and with experience we had with the CDA, is to use the profiling systems, to use FHIR-Pass, to use everything we can to ensure a good quality of data. And our first project is the e-prescription. So our strategy here was first, we tried to make a first draft by eliminating what we almost are sure we will not use. Point in red everything we don't know how to use or what to do with. And then discuss first with the expert we have internally to have something which looks better for the outside, and then go on the field and see with our partners how to refine what are the questions they have. For example, in Luxembourg, for the medication, is the usage to write what has been done and what is left to dispense. So I think the left to dispense, one of the posts, but I think it's the left to dispense was an extension. So we define this extension, for example. we define structure definition for everything, as I said, to ensure the good quality of data, to have a predictable result as well for the consumer of the prescriptions. And then through discussions with the laboratory, with the pharmacist, we try to enhance our implementation guide with human-friendly use case, with description how to do it. For example, how to manage a substitution. What happens if one medication is prescribed, but if two are dispensed to have the same effect? All questions that we alone will never think about it, but through the help of our experts from the field at Agence, from all the participants in our work groups, all the feedback that we have, we can define hopefully a good package of profiles for this use case. And then, of course, we try to reuse the structure like patient. We hope to have one representation of the patient for all the national platform. But
what kind of timeline do you have, Samuel, in mind?
Everything should work yesterday.
Sure.
No,
And just again, in terms of cost and resources for you, have you allocated specific resources to that? Is it now sufficiently high in the priority so that it's
yes,
you have?
yes, yes. It's really one of the most important topic. We have resources internally who build competencies on FHIR. We had to invest on the right tooling to support this. We have to as Malcolm explained, we have to help to be a facilitator as well. So we help our partners, and as well we publish the e-prescription is public. So our profiles are accessible. Probably we use maybe extensions because of lack of knowledge of other possibilities, but that's how you learn. Yes, it's really, for us, it's a priority because that's where the market goes. That everybody spoke about the advantages of FHIR. So it's really a hot topic for us. Yeah.
Thank you, Samuel. Chantal, last but not least. And actually, you've seen the question of Niels, with very much concerned about the whole bunch of money that the public authorities will need to invest in order to have the FHIR transformation happening. And actually, I think in the Netherlands, actually, it's not only about building the infrastructure, the tooling, it's and educating and, well, engaging. That's, of course, resources, but it's also compliance. And in the Netherlands, and it's testing and compliance. In the Netherlands, one of the country which has immediately focused on one key project, which is MedMe, right? Which is based on FHIR, and which relies on the certification scheme and an incentivization scheme. Yeah. So actually, would you reinforce Niels' position saying that actually the public authorities need to pay for FHIR transformation, but also need to pay for FHIR adoption by the industry? Is it the strategy followed by the Netherlands? It's a bit provocative, but you have the time to answer.
Well, I think having to pay for it is what you say, a bit provocative, but I think there is a need to assure that it's properly implemented in the software vendors. And I think through certification and our own validation process, you just have to go through that, and the information that the vendors have needs to be correct in order to get the certification. And without certification, you cannot use it. So, yeah, in a way, we try to make sure they comply. And the the government pays us, so yeah, the users also pay, but it's incorporated in our budget. So yeah, I hope that answers your question a bit.
I think this is fine because there are other implementation models which are more targeted at the users also, where
Yeah.
which use solutions, for example, which have been certified to be FHIR compatible. But actually, yes, there is always somewhere an incentivization scheme needed if you want to.
Yeah.
If you want to have things implemented in a decent lapse of time, that's quite clear. I would have liked to ask Medcom also to answer this one, but I would like you also to refer, because actually I know in the Netherlands you also have a lot of committees
Yeah.
operating, and you have been actually investing a lot in trying to associate all the key stakeholders. So I would like you also to react on that. So do you have a specific strategy for FHIR in
Well,
engaging stakeholders, or have you decided to specifically engage one category of stakeholder to drive it, or?
for now, what we do at NICTIZ is school the software vendors, and we schedule days where they can come in to our office and we can help them with implementation questions for FHIR. As an example, one software vendor wants to use our terminology server to implement the terminology, but he's stuck. And then we have a one-on-one session publicly with other vendors, so information is shared. And in that way, we try to get everybody together, and we have stakeholder meetings to see and to enthusiasm the others. And on the other hand, I saw your question in the chat about the new law we have in the Netherlands, or is going to, it's postponed at the moment because they want to see if the health data space, what that law is going to do before we proceed any further with the Weges legislation.
So actually you want to be sure that everything fits together.
Yeah, we don't want to do something and then have an international law that says something different.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, Chantal. I think that the remark in the chat of Michael is also interesting when they say that users require new functionality to move away from legacy, and that actually has also an impact on the price. So that's interesting, because I also retained from engineering presentation that actually one of the consequences of FHIR implementation is that it should support higher competition between products in a way, because integration is made much easier with third-party applications mainly. So it's also interesting to see how this will all evolve. Any reflection on this? Yes, Sara, go ahead.
I have a question for Giorgio. That is, we have some troubles, or not a trouble, but two ways to help organization and providers to implement FHIR on their platforms or their apps or whatever that needs to connect with the electronic health record of the department. And one is that there are some ones that just apply and REST APIs and send an XML that is defined by HL7 FHIR, but the other way is that they implement on their platforms APIs like I don't know, Happy FHIR or these kind of things. These two ways, I think it's really good to have, because then you can adapt more or less to HL7 FHIR, but I don't know if one is better than the other or it's the same.
FHIR allowed to provide different support to different physical representation. You may have FHIR represented with XML. You can have FHIR with JSON, even with the RTF turtle. So, and in your agreement, let's say in that way, in your capability statement, you can declare which of these three representations you are supporting. Usually, since the transformation is quite straightforward, the implementation support all of them. Only RDF turtle is less supported. Usually JSON and XML is supported, but this is part of the standard, so it's not nothing yet. Obviously, if you are looking to a different XML that is not FHIR and you have a REST API that support that is not FHIR, it's just a REST API that support. Then there is a lot of discussion on how to integrate IoT or Web of Things stuff together with the FHIR, and but this is a different chapter of thing, because there are different approach that of different philosophy also in the Web of Things and in the FHIR thing, but maybe not here the right place where to discuss that part.
Thank you, Giorgio. The first message is clearly that it's FHIR is really key, that is for an extremely agile itself, and is supporting not only messaging, but the building of infrastructure, and is a key driver to integration. That's clear, but all there must be a system to collaborate and coordinate, although we should not stop this agility, of course, but we need some kind of formal mechanism to make it happen and make sure that you don't really miss something important. Especially we've seen it for when dealing with extensions and these kind of things. We have seen that dealing with legacies is not always easy, and sometimes you need to deal with all the products, and but it can be complex and expensive. And indeed, most of the time, it has done. That was a remark that we had in chat, an impact on the price itself. We've seen that within the industry, that the expertise in FHIR needs to be more widely shared and distributed among the staff. So that's something which needs to be developed by industry mainly. We also agreed that we had to deal with the legacy standards. They have to coexist. And there is a question here again of using public money in order to deal with this legacy and do the necessary mapping, and which is sometimes complicated. Although once again, FHIR is extremely agile for a number of things. The message we got also of the importance to reward first movers who drive the way, provide the experience, provide the knowledge, provide the success is really important in the strategy to be developed by public authorities. And of course, have also a strategy to push the last movers, to help them, to identify them. We've seen that also FHIR is also highly influencing not only the messaging, but also the infrastructure, the reference infrastructure, which are being built by the different stakeholders, be them public or private. Both are saying that. We've seen that now with RS in particular, that the services developed by public authorities can be also a key driver for adoption. And the industry plays a role. We've seen with engineering that they haven't been investing on their side, and there is a positioning. But of course, they want to have also their return on investment. And for the time being, most of the investment is done by the public authorities. That's at least what I got from the conversation today. There was much more than that, but I trust just to summarize the key ones. So I would like to thank you all for your participation today.